The United States government called him the most dangerous man on earth. Britain called him a terrorist. France called him a threat to civilization. And yet, every single one of them shook his hand, signed his contracts, and took his oil. Then, when he became inconvenient, they hunted him through the desert like an animal, filmed his death, and celebrated on camera. This is not a story about a dictator. This is a story about how the most powerful governments in the world destroy anyone who threatens their control, and how they use your television, your newspapers, and your history books to make sure you never find out why. Welcome to History Under Radar, the stories that were never supposed to reach you. If this is your first time here, what you are about to hear will permanently change the way you see the world. Make sure you subscribe before this video ends, because this is only the beginning. To understand Gaddafi, you have to understand Libya before Gaddafi. In 1951, Libya gained independence from Italy. But independence on paper meant nothing in reality. The country was ruled by King Idris, an elderly monarch installed and supported entirely by Britain and the United States. While Idris lived in palaces draped in gold, 90% of Libyans lived in poverty so severe they had no access to clean water, no hospitals, no schools, no electricity, children dying in the streets from preventable diseases, mothers bearing babies that medicine could have saved. Libya was sitting on the largest oil reserves in all of Africa, but not a single drop of that wealth reached ordinary Libyans. 7 Western oil companies, later known as the Seven Sisters, controlled everything. They extracted Libyan oil, paid King Idris his cut, and sent the rest straight to London, New York, and Paris. The Libyan people received nothing. For 18 years this continued. While Western oil executives flew private jets and built mansions, Libyan families were sharing single rooms with no running water. In a military barracks in Tripoli, a young soldier watched all of this. Born in a tent in the Libyan desert to a Bedouin family with nothing, he grew up understanding poverty from the inside. He watched his people suffer while foreigners grew rich on their land. He was 21 years old when he joined the army. He was 27 when he decided he had seen enough. On the 1st of September 1969, while King Idris was receiving medical treatment abroad, the night that changed Libya forever began. It was just after midnight. Small, coordinated units of soldiers moved simultaneously across Tripoli. Radio stations were seized first, then military installations, then government buildings. No warning, no announcement, just disciplined soldiers moving through dark streets with absolute precision. The royal guards at the palace gates found themselves surrounded before they could radio for help. Communications were cut. The king's loyalists woke up to find the city already gone. By sunrise, it was over. No bloodshed, no civil war, no foreign support. The most powerful monarchy in North Africa had fallen in a single night. The king fled to Greece and never returned. The young officer who led the coup stepped in front of a microphone and told the Libyan people that everything was about to change. His name was Muammar Gaddafi. He was 27 years old. What happened next shocked the entire Western world. Gaddafi immediately nationalized Libya's oil industry. He threw out the Seven Sisters, canceled every contract, seized every asset, and redirected all oil revenue directly to the Libyan state. For the first time in history, Libya's oil wealth belonged to Libyans. What he did with that money was extraordinary. Within a decade, Libya had the highest literacy rate in Africa, going from just 10% to over 90%.
He built hospitals in every major city, universities that were completely free, housing programs that gave every Libyan family a home, free electricity, free healthcare, the highest standard of living on the entire African continent. In 1980, the United Nations ranked Libya as having the highest Human Development Index in Africa, higher than South Africa, higher than Egypt, higher than every other nation on the continent. A country that 20 years earlier had no running water had become the most prosperous nation in Africa. If this story is already making you question everything you were taught, you are not even at the worst part yet. Subscribe to History Under Radar right now, because every week we go deeper into the stories they buried, and this one is about to get much darker. Washington and London never forgave him. The moment Gaddafi nationalized Libyan oil, the machinery of Western power began working against him. First came the sanctions. then the embargoes, then the international isolation. Western media began constructing a very specific image of Gaddafi: unstable, dangerous, a madman, and the Western public believed every word. In 1986, President Ronald Reagan ordered airstrikes on Tripoli. The official reason was terrorism. The real reason was that Gaddafi had been funding liberation movements across Africa and the Middle East, movements that directly threatened Western interests. The bombs fell on residential areas. Gaddafi survived. His adopted 4-year-old daughter did not. He buried his daughter and kept defying them for 17 more years. Then, in 2003, something extraordinary happened. Gaddafi picked up the phone and called Washington and London. He was ready to make a deal. He would surrender his entire weapons development program, open Libya's oil fields back to Western companies, cooperate fully with Western intelligence agencies, in exchange for sanctions being lifted and international recognition. The deal was made. Weapons inspectors arrived. Every missile, every chemical weapon component, every piece of nuclear research was cataloged, dismantled, and handed over. In 2004, Tony Blair flew to Tripoli, shook Gaddafi's hand in his tent, smiled for the cameras, and announced a new era of cooperation. The terrorist was now a partner. Western oil companies flooded back into Libya. BP signed billion-dollar contracts. Shell followed. ExxonMobil followed. Everyone got exactly what they wanted. Everyone except the Libyan people, who watched their leader hand over his only protection to the same governments that had spent decades trying to destroy him. For 5 years, the partnership held. Then Gaddafi made the mistake that sealed his fate. In 2009, he stood before the United Nations General Assembly. He had been given 15 minutes to speak. He spoke for 90. For an hour and a half, he systematically dismantled every lie Western governments had told the world. He called out illegal wars. He named names. He accused Western powers of rewriting international law to serve their own interests. The Western diplomats sat in stunned silence, but it was not the speech that condemned him. It was what came next. Gaddafi proposed the creation of a single African gold currency, the gold dinar. Every African nation united under one currency, backed entirely by gold. No more US dollar. No more dependency on Western financial institutions. No more IMF loans with crippling conditions. Africa controlling its own economic destiny for the first time in history. This was not a speech. This was a declaration of war against the entire Western financial system. France moved first. President Sarkozy called the gold dinar a direct threat to French financial dominance in Africa. France alone had 14 African countries whose currencies were directly controlled by the French treasury. Gaddafi's gold dinar would have ended that overnight. In 2011, protests erupted across the Arab world: Tunisia, Egypt, Bahrain, and suddenly, Libya. What began as protests quickly became an armed uprising. Western intelligence agencies were deeply embedded in the opposition. Weapons flowed in from Qatar and the UAE. NATO declared a no-fly zone, officially to protect civilians, in reality to destroy Gaddafi's air force and leave him defenseless. For 8 months, NATO conducted over 26,000 airstrikes on Libya. Gaddafi's forces were systematically destroyed from the air. He fled. He hid. He was found on the 20th of October 2011, cowering inside a drainage pipe in his hometown of Sirte. What happened next was filmed and broadcast across the world. He was beaten, tortured, and executed without trial. When the news reached Washington, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton appeared on camera. She laughed. "We came, we saw. He died," she said, and laughed again. The man who had given his country free hospitals, free schools, and free housing. The man who had turned the poorest nation in Africa into the richest. The man who had surrendered his weapons, trusting that the deal would protect him, died in a drainage pipe, while the most powerful woman in American politics laughed about it on television. Today, Libya is unrecognizable. The country that once had the highest standard of living in Africa is now a failed state. Multiple governments fighting for control, cities reduced to rubble, and open-air slave markets where African migrants are bought and sold in 2024 on the same soil where Gaddafi once built free hospitals. The gold that was held in Libya's central bank disappeared. Billions of dollars in Libyan sovereign wealth funds frozen by Western governments never returned. The oil fields that Gaddafi had nationalized are now back in Western hands. Everything they came for, they took. Here is what your history books will not tell you. Gaddafi was not removed because he was dangerous. He was removed because he was effective, because a prosperous, independent Africa is the single greatest threat to Western economic dominance. He trusted the deal. He surrendered his weapons. He opened his borders. He believed that cooperation would protect him. It did not. And the moment his country stopped being useful to the people who destroyed him, they stopped pretending they ever cared about the Libyan people at all. His name was Muammar Gaddafi, and they needed you to forget him. Now you won't. If this video changed the way you see the world, subscribe to History Under Radar right now. Every week we uncover another story they buried, another leader they destroyed, another truth they rewrote. Share this video with someone who still believes everything their government tells them. They need to see this. And leave a comment below telling us what part of this story shocked you the most, because your government is counting on your silence. History Under Radar is counting on your voice.